So, hello everybody. I guess everyone who has ever paid any attention to our hobby has noticed that a very big company that has been producing one of the best-selling RPGs of all time has gone off the deep end. And lots of people are now leaving that game and are looking for alternatives. I'm such a person. And so I thought I am going to tell you a little bit about possible alternatives that you can use to replace your existing system with something else. So in this series, and it's going to be a loose series, I don't know how many gaming systems I will actually cover. I'm going to focus on games that have a fantasy setting or can be used in a fantasy setting, because the game we're talking about is, of course, a fantasy game. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how easy I believe it is to use the system, because the system that we're trying to move away from has one advantage, and one advantage only, really, and that is that it is super easy to use in its most recent incarnation. I also understand from listening to the community that while it may be easy to use, most people actually don't really like it, although they play it, but they basically homebrew lots of things. So all of the systems that I will be talking about will also allow you to homebrew, and they will all be world agnostic. So I will not be covering RuneQuest, which is completely set in Glorantha, and all of its environs and everything that happens even at character creation for this game sets it firmly in Glorantha. And if you want to use a different setting, you would actually have to adapt your setting to Glorantha and just then call everything something else. Likewise, I would say that I'm not going to cover Pathfinder 2nd edition, because I played Pathfinder 1st edition for around about 5 years and I really didn't like it. And I have not touched 2nd edition. I'm told that A, it's very different from 1st edition, and B, if you really are interested in Pathfinder, then there are plenty of videos and channels by people who are actively playing, who are actively contributing to its very vibrant community. And I would not be doing this system any favors if I was to try and explain if it's suitable, just drawing on my 1st edition knowledge. So today we're going to start off with a game that I have never run, but that I've been playing in for the last 4 years, I believe, and it's called Beyond the Wall. Now, Beyond the Wall is an English game. I believe it has been translated at least into German. It could be available in other languages as well. I'm not sure. And it is a game of low fantasy. What do I mean by low fantasy? Well, when we look at games like Pathfinder 2nd edition, Pathfinder 1st edition, and I believe this is still true of Pathfinder 2nd edition, you have a lot of magic. You have fire magic that, like tears through enemies, that kind of thing. Low fantasy is more on the Tolkien end of things, where there is some magic, although Tolkien is very, very low fantasy, as is the One Ring, because magic there is really restricted to the Istari. But there is some magic, but it is not very obvious. And sometimes low fantasy settings also don't really allow the PCs to have any magic. So if we look at these two poles, no magic, lots of magic, I would say it falls right in the middle with regard to the availability of magic. You can have magical characters, they can cast spells, but they're not as overwhelming, and then by no means as over the top, pulpy, might I say, as the ones in Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons or any other of this kind of game. It is rules light. It works with rolls of d20s and then sometimes other dice for damage, for example. And you have attributes like intelligence, for example, or your ability to resist physical damage, resilience, that kind of thing. And depending on your stat in this, which is usually between, I don't think you can be below 2 and you can't go over 20. You get modifiers that you can then add to modify a d20 roll. So you sometimes have to roll over, and sometimes you have to roll under, and damage and attack work the same way. You also have 3 ways to resist certain attacks that come at you, magical attacks, for example, and that kind of thing, poison attacks. And if you don't play a magic user, you really just have 1 page on your character sheet, and that's it. It is absolutely world agnostic. You can build your own world around it. However, it does come with a predefined world, which you can use right out of the box. One of the things that is quite unique about this system is the way you create a character. When you create a character, what you do is you sit down with the other players and you choose, if you like, a concept. So for example, there is the village hero and so on and so forth. Out of the box, you play children. So you're about 14 to 15 years old, which is why some of the things that happen during character creation are geared towards characters that are not grown-ups yet. This is something that may put some people off, but I would say if you just tweak this a little, you will be fine playing this with grown-up characters. It does not mean that the themes handled in this game are for children. So it doesn't mean that it's made for children players. As you go through the character creation, you do a lot of rolling on tables. So a lot of this is left to chance. You may like this, you may not like this. We went by the book, as it were, which led to me being the village hero with no relevant stats at any high level. I got wisdom, which doesn't help me at all because I'm tanking and I should be tanking, but I have very low constitution. So also my defense value is really low. So that's what happens when you leave all of this to chance. I haven't died yet, but that means that you may come up with a character where the concept doesn't fit the stats. And that's something that I really don't like. And I would suggest that if you are like me, you just do this differently. Everybody reads through the abilities or through the relevant tables and then chooses one of the elements that suits their character best. Another thing that happens during character creation is that you also create your hub, your base, and that's a village. And basically, as you do so, somebody needs to draw the village. Again, we were really lucky because the person who runs the game can draw really well. I would definitely not be able to do this, but I think you can also forego this. The most important thing is that you kind of come up with, okay, we've got a settlement, we've got a place where we stay, where we live. Also maybe the place that we want to defend, something that is dear to us, something that is worth fighting for. And what kind of places are there? It's usually rural. It's kind of like set in medieval Wales, even from the words of the used in the game, in the language that's used in the game. It's definitely Welsh. So you have a miller, you may have a weaver, you may have this, that, and the other, and then everybody gets to create one NPC that lives in that village. This NPC doesn't get statted, so it's not like you have to fill in a character sheet for them, but they will be there and you have some kind of connection to them. I believe maybe even you get to create 2, I'm not sure. But basically this is what happens, and then at the end of the character creation session, which really is a session, you have a fully statted character group. You have a place of operation, as it were, or a base for your operations. And this is also a living, breathing place with people in it and people that your characters can relate to. So it's not up to the DM to come up with all of this. And then you are good to go. Now, I believe that this, if you have ever played any old school games, like Old School Essentials or something like that, you will find a lot of the mechanics are very familiar, minus the whole dungeon crawl aspect, because that's not really part of it. Combat, for those of you who like combat, and I certainly want my share of combat in the game, because at the end of the day, I am the village hero, so I do want to kick some ass. It is very elegant and smooth. It's nothing to write home about with regard to being very special or very thought out. It's just basically, oh, you attack somebody, they have a kind of defense value, and you have an attack value, which may be modified by the weapon that you're using, maybe modified by your ability to wield certain weapons, then maybe by a strength modifier, things like that. You roll a d20 and that's it, and then you do damage if you are successful. And when you get attacked, it's the same thing. You have a defense value that your enemy tries to overcome in order to make damage on your character. Magic works fairly similarly. You learn spells as you go ahead and advance in levels. You can decide what kind of spells you want. I believe, because I've never played a magic user, that actually the magic is divided. Not every magic user type can learn every single spell. This is at least my understanding, but I think, again, if you feel that you have a magic user who has had stuff happen to them during the game, which might make sense, or which might change the way they do magic, or might give them some insight into different schools of magic, you can always decide to give them more or give them different spells. Like I said, it's low magic, so there are spells, but they are by no means super powerful. And there is a diverse way of casting spells in terms of, it's not all combat, but there is also other types of spells that you can cast. So also divination related spells, for example, looking at stuff and checking, is this magical, things like that. So what we have been doing is we have been playing with the same characters for the last 4 years. So this goes to show that this system is not a one-shot system. Unlike, for example, Monster of the Week, where each story is actually episodic and it maybe lasts only 3 to 4 sessions. And then you can also go away and create completely different characters. You can definitely use this to play a whole campaign, and it will work. You progress using XP, and different classes progress differently at different speeds. So I believe magic users need a lot more XP to get to the next level than, for example, a fighter would. So that's very interesting. It is also reminiscent of very old versions of D&D where this was similar. And of course, if you are looking to replace D&D, which may be why you're looking to find a different system, you will see a lot of things that are reminiscent of it, even to the point that you will see some of the mechanics that are almost identical. But of course, that's not a problem because you cannot copyright game mechanics. I will say one thing about the art. The art is very different from the art that has been thrown at us for the last, I would say, ever since 4th edition came out. And Pathfinder isn't much better. It's all this bland kind of like anime style, over the top, spiky hair, which I really detest because it's actually just a run of the mill. It's almost stock at this stage. The art is super different and really lovely to look at. It's memorable. When you see one of those books, you will recognize immediately this is a book from that series. Whereas today, when you look at your run-of-the-mill D&D Pathfinder and you just see an image, you're going to go, unless it's one of the iconic characters, oh my God, it's one of the, I have no idea where this comes from. It is very distinct in its art style, and it carries the art style through consistently all of its books. So this is a clear recommendation if you're looking for low fantasy, light on rules, also light on the ability to customize characters. So if you want a lot of prestige classes and feats here and feats there, then steer away from this. This is not going to work for you. It is also a game that you can use if you like playing children as characters, but it's easily adaptable if you want to play with grown-up characters. You may need to tweak a couple of things that happen during character creation with regard to background elements, because some of them are not suitable for grown-ups anymore. But it's a clear recommendation. It is available. It is also super supported. because I, as a player, didn't have to buy anything because you can get a lot of stuff online from the publishers. So that's Beyond the Wall. And yeah, I would really say check it out. There are also playthroughs of the system available. I only know of the ones that are done in German because I'm part of them, but I'm pretty sure that if you search for playthroughs of Beyond the Wall, you will also find English YouTube channels that cater towards this, that you get an impression. So talk to you soon. Bye.